This is Sumelevate checking in with you again. This time we have Matthias with us. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Great. So, what made you want to be a part of this?
Um, okay. So for me, um, Subed and I started speaking to each other in one of our classes
Yeah,
we had, and we immediately kind of started talking about leadership and just the power that can have over people and the positive
definitely.
impact it can have
Yeah,
on just really everyone.
yeah,
So I think that's what immediately struck me, and I just wanted. I haven't really found anybody, a platform, or really anybody on the campus who's really willing to talk about this kind of stuff, and
definitely. Yeah.
so we really share those common interests. So I think that's why I'm here.
Cool. Awesome, dude. And I've seen you at the gym also working
Yeah.
hard.
Mm.
So, what motivates you to go to the gym and push
What
harder than before?
what motivates me to go to the gym? I guess for me, the gym. I think the gym. There's a great motivational speaker named Jarrett Grossman
Yeah,
um, who really ingrained this idea in my head
yeah,
of building your mental and physical fitness,
yeah,
right? And he talks about he mentions this all the time and how the that not every rep, like you notice that when you're going through your sets and then you have to say you need to do like 10 reps, right?
yeah.
So you're doing your 10, you need to do about 10, and you're the first couple you don't really feel it.
Mm,
Then the fifth and sixth and seventh ones you start to feel it a bit more, and then it starts to hurt, and that's when you needed to push through. I
yeah.
remember one of my favorite Muhammad Ali quotes. He said, "I don't count my sit-ups. I count them when they start to hurt."
Mm,
So,
yeah,
because that pain that's the muscle. I don't know the exact science, but that's the muscle tearing,
yeah.
and those reps are transcendent in nature.
Right. And
Those
that
what really
soreness is a reminder of like the growth.
that's what
Yeah.
really made that's when the growth happens.
Hmm.
Instead of but if you just like once it starts to hurt, you stop, then you're losing
Right.
that growth. So to answer your question properly, I think I go to the gym because it taught me to push past that initial pain.
Yeah.
And that's why it's been so important to me. And I think I tell everybody this is people ask me how I got in how to it's like how'd you what was your what was your application process like, how'd you get
Yeah.
in here? I say, well, I mean, part of the reason, one of the things that saved me was going to the gym. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I mean, it gave me the self-discipline to just like even when and then I've applied that, so it gave me self-discipline. So a lot of the
Yeah.
time I didn't want to go to the gym.
And you apply what you learn at the gym in other aspects
Oh
of your
yeah,
life.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because like you, a lot of the time you don't want to. I think a lot of people really don't want to do a lot of the shit in their lives. Right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of shit that we don't want to do, but
Definitely.
but then you have to. Like I really don't want to go to the gym. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I really am not in the mood at all, but I force myself to, and then I feel so much better after I do. Because and it's a
Yeah,
discipline.
there is this aspect of feeling better. Like it's this,
Absolutely,
it affects
absolutely.
your mental capacity kind of a little bit.
And there's a great Brian Tracy quote that I actually have on my bulletin board
Oh, I
here.
love
It
Brian Tracy.
says, yeah, he's awesome. He said, successful people do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's really poignant, and I think that's really true. And I think
Yeah.
that's what really, that's what I say got me into Bennington, because I pushed myself in the gym, and then I started to realize I can do this in other aspects of my life as well. So then
Yeah.
I started pushing myself during my assignments. Like I used to like not understand a math problem, and I'm horrible at math. But then like I couldn't understand a math problem, so I give up. But then once I started pushing, I pushed myself, and I made myself sit down and work through this problem or work through this essay or figure it out. And then my grades in January of my senior year, I was like at a 75 overall average, like
Yeah.
total in my at school, and then by the end of my senior year, I was at a 94, and
Awesome.
I made honor roll. So
Mm.
I think for me the biggest thing about that was that I got into motivational speaking. I just had a whole lifestyle change, and
Yeah.
even my friends were like, "Dude, you're like a completely different person
Yeah.
from 5 months ago." Or even just like a couple weeks ago, and it's just that I just engage with a lot of really positive stuff.
Yeah.
So
And
Eric,
it changed your mindset, and that's what really
absolutely, it was a mindset change,
changed.
and I think that's often really like that's kind of a concept that's disparaged. Like, oh, it's like, well, I think Tony Robbins brings it up a lot. It's all about your mindset, your mind
Yeah, your
state.
personal power and stuff.
Exactly. And then a lot of people kind of disregard that and say it's just like wishful thinking and like self-helpy. And but
Yeah.
I don't really agree with that. I think once I changed my mind, I was in this mindset of I'm a failure. I'm horrible in school. I'm just not a smart person. Like I'm gonna, I don't know, work
Yeah.
at a garage my whole life. But
Right.
I didn't, but then
Once
I
you start
knew.
hearing those things, it becomes your reality.
Exactly. And you kind of affirm yourself in a negative way.
Hmm.
Like again, Tony Robbins again, who's been a huge part of my life,
Yeah.
just in terms of making myself a better person. Just he's just like he always talks about the affirmations, like I will, I like I don't know, like Eric Thomas is a good example. I can, I will, I must. You know,
Yeah.
just like it's
Yeah.
just those affirmations, like you affirm yourself, and whether or not it's actually happening, it doesn't matter because you're
Right.
putting yourself in the mindset of a successful person, of a person who's driven, and it's kind of like fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's I guess that what I took away from that is that you have to fake it until you make it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I wasn't a confident
That's
person.
really where my journey began too. Is that
Totally.
fake it till you make it.
Totally. Like I was not a confident person,
Yeah.
but I started my dad one day was just like, dude, you got to work on your posture.
Yeah.
I was like you're really tall. Like you got to embrace that. I was like, you have a gift, use it. And I'm like, okay, dad. And then I started like walking. I started walking a bit more better, and then I started my posture was a bit better, and I started working out, so I started to feel better about myself. And then that was just so transcendent. You just walk with a completely different kind of spirit.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you see some people schlepping around, like, head down, like, in their phone, and then I was
Right.
just walking.
Because they want to, like, say you're really tall, you want to, like, sort of be the height as
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
else. You want to fit in with the crowd, and so you
I
kind of
actually
make
found
yourself
myself, like, stooping.
right.
below
You make
down.
yourself smaller than you
Yeah.
actually are. Yeah.
Instead of just
definitely.
embracing who you are.
And it's
So,
how you see yourself. You know, we feel inadequate, but it's about like loving yourself 100%.
absolutely.
And how you do that is your own journey. I mean,
Absolutely. And that's what the past probably about year has been, just learning to
Yeah.
love myself and embrace myself for who I am,
It's
and
awesome.
which I think exercise really has been so crucial in that.
Definitely. How important do you think it is for guys to start getting themselves to the gym? Or just like, what do you think the issue of masculinity is nowadays?
Mm.
Because it's so ingrained in our media, you know,
Mhm.
and things we watch around us that
Yeah.
we have a misconception, I feel like.
What do you think that misconception is?
Well, I think nowadays we're just like watching all these rom-coms, and we think like, oh, okay, right, like this guy is like just being a pushover, like he's completely like making himself seem like he needs to do whatever he can to get the girl. Like that's the kind of like this white knight mentality, you know.
Okay.
And also just like guys nowadays aren't like they're just like, oh, it's fine if I don't do anything. It's just
yeah. Mhm.
there's also this kind of laziness, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a severe lack of ambition or
Yeah,
something.
right.
I don't know. That's hard for me. And I think what's really frustrating for a lot of men today, as a whole, is that obviously we do have it better in certain aspects and other people in life, other oppressed people. But I think for men, it's just a lack of identity.
Right, yeah.
Because, like, I think, like, femininity is pretty well defined. I don't know. I'd have to ask some women about that and see what they think. But I think femininity itself is pretty well defined. But masculinity doesn't really have a definition.
Right.
Like, if I were to ask you, hey, Sumedh, what do you think how do you define masculinity? Like, you would
I'd
have
probably define it
completely
differently from every other guy. Yeah.
Exactly. And, like, a lot of guys, they say they don't know. Or some people will just laugh at you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they'll be like, oh, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or, like, and then there's this idea of toxic masculinity. And, you know, so I don't want to say it's universally shamed, but it's definitely, like, confusing.
It is, yeah.
Like, it's like, what is a man? Like, and there's never an answer to that because no one knows. And you're almost afraid to ask the question because people will laugh at you.
Right.
So, I think it's just it's an identity issue.
Yeah.
A lot of things.
Mm-hmm. And where do you think we can kind of make that much easier? What can people start doing so it becomes much easier for guys to just embrace the fact that they're just being themselves, you know,
Um,
and not being like not trying to label themselves as a certain,
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of tough for me to answer right now.
yeah,
I think because I think, like, again, because there's so many definitions. Like, some people will advocate for a cultural definition of masculinity,
yeah,
where if you're not the starting linebacker on the football team and you can't bench press
right,
300 pounds, then you're not a real man, or you can't grow a mustache, or whatever the
yeah,
case may be, then you're not a fucking man. You don't got to worry about that
you
though.
know, yeah,
Um, but yeah, but I mean, and then there's some people who suggests a functional definition of masculinity where, like, the man is the leader and the woman is the follower, and that's how the relationship is structured, and that's how all relationships should be structured.
yeah,
And then there's just so many confusing definitions of what it can and can't be, and then some people say masculinity as a whole is just this kind of evil thing. So it's I don't know. I have kind of a hard time answering that right now because I myself don't really know. Like,
yeah, yeah,
and then I read this book not too long ago called The Way of Men by Jack Donovan,
mhm,
and he talks about how the roots of masculinity and, like, from, like, that men have always lived in groups,
yeah,
and especially men. Like, while people have always been grouped together, but men especially function really well in groups. I don't know about you, but I have a group of guy friends. I don't
yeah,
really have a group of friends who are girls who hang out together. I have a group of guy friends, and we all hang out together and we all do our own thing.
yeah,
And he essentially says that that is the way and that's the way things should be. Jack Donovan in this book, he says that that's the way things should be, and that men should be in these groups together, and that I think it's hard to explain, but he said we are meant to be in groups together, and that society thinks that groups of men is automatically like a red flag, and that
yeah,
groups of men is never a good thing. And so it's just an interesting take on masculinity as a whole, as because he really critiques the whole toxic masculinity perspective and how the more modern view of men as, like,
mhm,
very spineless, and they lost their identities as men, and that they don't really stand up for themselves, they don't take authority or anything like that.
yeah,
So it's definitely a different perspective on it. And of course, one thing that I interesting that a lot of sources bring up about why men are really struggling right now
mhm,
is kind of this a lot of single mothers,
mhm,
which I don't completely know if I completely understand this or whether or not I agree with this, but this is just an idea I'm pushing forward,
mhm,
and that the reason why a lot of men are struggling is just a lack of a father figure
mhm,
and a lack
yeah,
of a strong mentor. And then I think, like, what I've realized is that since I've been a much better guy and much better man because I have my dad in my life.
mhm,
Whereas if I didn't, I think I'd really struggle with that. And I think
yeah,
what Jack Donovan says in the book, and it kind of makes sense when you think about this, is that, like, gangs, like street gangs, or like these groups of men,
mhm,
like, sort of like not that they're primal themselves, but they kind of fit into this idea of a group of men who are walking around the streets together, who are really tight.
yeah,
And a lot of why the gangs are so appealing is because these boys don't have a male role model in their life.
mhm.
So when they do find a male role model, even though in a lot of cases they're not very good, they just latch on to these groups because they're mentors.
That's all they have.
Exactly. So I
Mhm,
think that's a lot of it's just, I don't want to blame it on single mothers. It's kind of unfair, but I
yeah,
think that's one of the factors why a lot of men feel kind of like lost in their identity, because we don't really have an identity. And, like,
yeah.
it's been kind of, I don't want to say, would you agree that it's been shamed a little bit?
I think it has, yeah. But I think also it's been shamed for women too. There's not a
Absolutely.
kind of there's this
Absolutely.
disbalance, you know. David Data's take is kind of interesting and looking at it more of like energies, rather.
The masculine and the feminine
Um,
energies.
yeah,
The polarity.
the polarities
Yeah.
exactly. Um, that's very interesting. Um, let's talk about goals.
Okay.
So we all have these goals, right? We all want to achieve great things, but I feel like it's very pressure based.
Hmm.
Now, on the other side, there's this kind of this theme that we live our lives by, kind of like a lifestyle. So, of course, we can say that I want the best. I want to achieve this goal by this time. But then there's also this notion of just like letting it go, just being free to embrace what comes into your life.
Yeah.
So, where do you think that balance is? And sticking to your goals, but also just being free to the moment. You know?
Well, that's kind of a lifelong. It's tough because
Yeah.
you see in a lot of well, what I found interesting is that in a lot of, if I'm understanding the question correctly, in a lot of these videos that I listen to, motivational videos, they talk about, I think specifically a Greg Plitt video. If you don't know who he is, look him
Yeah.
up. He's great, but he says that it's like I'd rather lose sleep now than lose sleep later in regret because I didn't do what I needed to do or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the question, I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, is how do you balance the searching for your goals but also being present in the
Right.
moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I went through that pretty recently, and I brought it up in class that one
Yeah.
day. Is
Like
that
taking
like,
opportunities
mhm.
when they come. Yeah.
And not only that, but just like, how do you balance that? Because I know some people who are so driven, and then it's a classic example. These people who are so driven to succeed in their careers, and they succeed, they're incredibly successful, but they're just so unhappy because they don't have good relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of how, I think, because it's tough because you want to build up your relationships. Because I know a friend of mine who's really ambitious and who's 19. He's building his own business and everything, and he just refuses to get a girl. He just does not want a girlfriend because he said it's just going to distract him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like whether or not, and obviously you and I are both ambitious people, and
Mm-hmm.
we're getting along really well, and we both have girlfriends. So
Yeah.
obviously not for everyone, but he's just so he wants to be an animator and he loves animation and he just refuses. I was like, hey, Anthony, you should try and get a girlfriend or something. He's like, no, no, I gotta stay focused. All I do is
Yeah.
animate. She's gonna be bored as fuck, you know. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, we say that there are different kinds of people. There are lumpers and then there's splitters.
okay.
So like splitters, just well they just go for that one goal. That just
Mhm.
like that they're driven by this one thing and whatever else
Mhm.
happens that they bring that into their life. And then lumpers are like people who like me, like I cluster information. And
Yeah,
I sort of have varied interests, you know. I don't have like this
yeah.
one
So
thing that I'm very into. I like to do multiple things
mhm.
and make sure that I'm kind of versatile.
Absolutely,
So
yeah, yeah,
maybe your friend's more of a splitter, I'm thinking.
yeah. I'd say so. I think he's just so singularly focused on
Yeah.
getting that goal achieved because he loves it. He's been doing it his whole life.
Yeah.
He loves it. So
Hmm.
I guess that's just him. But I think I think just having I think one of the most important things is healthy relationships. And it
Yeah.
sounds like a cliche and everything, but I think it still rings extremely true that your relationships are the most important thing in your life.
Yeah.
Because there's so many stories of like really successful men or women who are just so unhappy because they don't see their kids.
Right. There's no social aspect to their life. They're
Exactly.
just focused on
Exactly.
themselves. But you
Like,
can't. You
mhm.
have to have some kind of, I mean, connection, some kind of value. We want to belong as humans. I
Yeah.
feel like there's this need to belong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So as a going back to goals, I mean, do you think it's better to live your life by maybe a theme or a lifestyle? Maybe like, say you could have like be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna live my life as it comes. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna have a pure lifestyle. I'm gonna
Yeah.
eat
Yeah.
healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm gonna just do all the things that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people want to live like a hedonistic lifestyle, and that's not to say that they're wrong for doing that. I mean,
Uh huh.
that's their own personal
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I
journey.
think.
But do you think that's better, or do you think? I mean, I agree that goals are also important. Goals, setting little goals for yourself are important, and dreaming big is definitely important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there's also you need to sort of maintain this lifestyle too in order to grow. You know?
Yeah. I think for me, I think the lifestyle for me is the best way to approach it, at least from my perspective. So, like, some people have a very rigid lifestyle. Some people have a very, um, some people are more open, like you said, hedonistic, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then that's to each their own,
Yeah.
for me at least. I think for me, though, I need to be organized. Like, I have a calendar on my desk right now, and I write out 5 things I want to accomplish every day. That's me, because I know
Yeah.
I'm kind of still have that disorganized aspect of myself.
Hmm.
So if I don't write everything down, then I'm probably
Yeah.
going to forget it.
I definitely need post-it notes to remind
Absolutely,
me.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and just reinforcing things like that. But some people can just hear something once and then know it. So
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that's all I have to say about it right now. But can you rephrase the question, actually?
I'm just wondering about this need to accomplish goals
Mm-hmm.
like all the time versus like focusing on like a theme of your life,
Okay.
like a lifestyle, and just
Mm-hmm.
like living off of that. Like
Okay.
if you live a rich man's lifestyle, you're just gonna start doing all these things. And I guess it's more of a question of what we were talking about, like lumpers versus splitters, but
Yeah.
also just like how can, in your opinion, how can we set little goals for ourselves in order to get to a big goal?
Huh. I think I think it's a matter of being organized among one,
Yeah.
being everything. And I think, especially for me, this differs. But I need, like I just said, I need to write it down.
Yeah.
Like I have 20 things. Another Brian Tracy thing. The guy's brilliant. 20 things. He said you need to write down 20 things that you need to do to accomplish a goal. So if it's I want to get a car. It's like, okay, well, you need to get a job, you need to save it, you need to, and then you write down 20 things that you need to accomplish so you are physically engaging with the task. And
Yeah.
that's what's always been helpful for me. Um, but um,
What kind of a learner are you? Do you learn better by listening or by visualizing?
I'd say definitely visualizing.
Yeah.
Do you know who Conor McGregor is by any chance?
No, I don't.
Okay, so he's this UFC fighter. He's this Irish UFC fighter from
Oh, okay. I
Ireland.
might have heard. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and he's really cocky. Some people would say it's just supreme confidence, and it is. But he always talks about visualizing success. And he said from an early age, there's an interview with him when he was
Yeah.
like 19 years old, and he's got like acne all over his face, and his voice is a lot higher, and he's like you'll see me in the UFC in the near future. You know, he's got like,
Yeah.
and he just predicts it, and then like
Oh
3 years
yeah.
later, he's in the UFC, and they ask him like, Connor, how'd you figure that out? It's like how did you become so successful? And he's just like, I visualized it, and and then he visualized himself becoming this great fighter, and he genuinely believed it. And I think there's a difference between visualization and dream, just like thinking about
Just
it.
daydreaming. Yeah.
Yeah, like
There's
I can
definite
daydream.
difference. Yeah.
I can daydream about being a great. I don't know, like a great cricket player, but like it's like unless I actually like. But he was genuinely wanted to do it. He genuinely believed he could do it. But like, if I just like suddenly want to dream, if I suddenly just have a little daydream about being this, or this, but I don't apply that.
Right. You
my
don't
actual
take action,
lifestyle,
then there's no.
yeah, then there's no action. But he took action. Not only did he take action, but I think that belief propelled him.
Right.
And you see some of the greatest athletes of all time genuinely believe that they're the best at what they do.
Right.
Ali, for example. Like, I'm the greatest of all time. Like, he'd always just be
Yeah.
he would say it over and over and over again. And he you could tell he genuinely believed it.
I think there's something in our brains that when we hear the word the best, it kind of tricks the brain into
Mhm.
become optimized, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we see it from like, people who start skiing in these video games. They start playing these skiing video games, and they see themselves winning in that. That's kind of visualizing, I guess.
Yeah.
And they eventually end up winning. And so
Mm-hmm.
even if sometimes you'll have this dream, and
Yeah.
you'll wake up and you'll be like, wow, like this is actually manifesting itself in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a little woo-woo, a little weird to think that,
Yeah,
but
but
it's
then
kind of like it's your subconscious is incredibly powerful, I think.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so going on, I want to talk about how we as people hold certain grudges, you know?
Uh,
We have like a cognitive dissonance. We will attach ourselves onto one idea that we can't be open-minded, you know?
mm, yeah,
And so it totally doesn't suit people, I think. I think separation is the greatest delusion.
hmm
We need more unity right now, especially
hmm
right now.
hmm
The more grudges we hold on to, kind of, we become physically sicker. I mean,
absolutely,
you know? And
yeah.
so, what do you do to just let go? Is my
I
question.
mean, so I'll use an example because I find this a lot in relationships that
Yeah.
have dissipated,
Hmm.
especially like, and I'll just use an example of a friend of mine still holds a grudge against his ex
Yeah.
girlfriend,
Yeah.
and like he still feels feelings towards her, and they've been oh, they haven't dated in like a year and a half, and he's
Hmm.
still like, oh, I hate her, and he still thinks
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
her, and and
Yeah.
then I'm just baffled by that. But like, I'll use an example of my own life. So, I dated my ex girlfriend from the end of freshman year till the beginning of my junior year of high school,
Hmm.
and it was really fun for a while. But then there was just some negative aspects of it, and I wasn't always like the best boyfriend, and she definitely wasn't always the best girlfriend. And then we eventually broke up because I just wasn't happy, and neither of us were really that happy, so I broke it
Yeah.
off. And for a while, I just had these really negative feelings towards her.
Hmm.
And I was always blaming her for why I felt so shitty and why I was having such a bad junior year.
Yeah.
And and there's two and then but then I realized that I was just harboring these negative emotions and they weren't gaining me anything.
Yeah. They weren't doing anything for you. Yeah.
No, there was nothing positive, or I wasn't gaining anything from it. It was just harboring these negative emotions that could just come out at any time and
Right.
come out in the wrong way or anything like that. So I think what I realized with a lot of past relationships, whether it's with a woman or whether it's just like an old friend, is that I try and see them at their best
Hmm.
and not at their worst.
Yeah.
Because I think very often, like, because I always think, how would they want me? How would they want to look at me? How would they want to remember me?
Hmm.
And I want them to remember me at my best. I don't want them to remember me when they like and during my worst
Yeah.
moments because it's especially with a girlfriend that's really really intimate stuff, and I don't want them to remember me at my worst. I want them to always remember me at my best. So that's what I do with all of my ex friendships or ex girlfriends. I just remember them at their best because I love them at their best.
Yeah.
I love them at
Yeah.
their worst. So I think that's how I forgive people because I just think of them when I was truly in love with them, and then that's what always makes me feel better.
Yeah. I mean, something that I really do is I tell myself that every day is a new beginning, you know?
Totally, yeah,
And we have to learn to forgive not only others, but ourselves sometimes. And so
yeah, absolutely,
I just have to tell myself, like, just let it go, man. It's going to be fine. Like, time will heal. That kind of,
totally.
that kind of mindset.
And
Yeah,
it takes a while.
it does. Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a really long time, especially with heartbreak. Heartbreak like
Yeah,
takes a
it's
really long
powerful.
time to heal.
Hmm.
But you just have to, and also like forgiving yourself
Hmm.
is such a big thing for me. Like when I
Yeah.
fuck up, I even just like recently I fucked up something at school, and then I just beat myself up about it. And I was
Hmm.
like, "You're an idiot! Like you can't just do this one thing. Like
But
what's
then you
wrong with you?"
start talking to yourself like it's something so negative, and it gets worse over time when you
Totally.
start
And
doing
then
that.
like I had a bad practice. I'm on the frisbee team, and I had a really bad practice on Sunday.
Yeah.
Dropped the frisbee a bunch of times. I was like really really shitty. And then I was just like, "What are you doing?" Like I was like, You're like you can't just catch a freaking frisbee. It's like it's not hard." And but then I realized that
Yeah.
I wasn't mentally focused and I wasn't grounded. And so it's just this trap of beating yourself up, and then
Yeah.
it just never ends. It never ends. You just
That's
beat yourself
interesting. You
up and
have
then you
this
feel
like
worse.
internal coach like telling you, "What are you doing, man?"
Yeah, yeah. It's got the whistle and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a young entrepreneur. We could say that, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think? How's your business going? What makes a good business for you?
Ooh, I think for me, what makes it good? It's going really well.
Mhm.
We're actually moving into our first office
That's
at the end of the
great.
month, I'm so excited about.
Awesome.
But I think what makes a good business is, I guess it would be just having passion for what you do and always wanting to try something new
Yeah.
and not being afraid to fail.
Hmm.
And I think breaking the rules a little bit too.
Hmm.
And just like trying new things that maybe a lot of people in the industry in your specific field haven't tried.
Hmm.
And just not being afraid to fuck up.
Yeah.
And
I guess that sets you apart from other businesses in
yeah,
a
I
sense. If
mean,
you
that's what
decide to take more risks, you get a higher reward for that.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
sometimes like you'll fail, and then sometimes you'll have to try a new project. But I think that's what
I
makes
always
us
say that your last failure is your best mentor too. So
totally. You learn so much.
yeah.
And the business we created, it was the first two times it failed.
Yeah.
And we were both like 16 and 17, and the first time we did it, it failed completely. And then we looked at our past models and why it had failed, and then we examined it and we said, okay, maybe we can tweak this, and okay, maybe we can market in this area a little more, maybe we could be more active in the community, and then this time it's been awesome, and it's been so enjoyable, and it's been so like tough, but it's also been a great experience, and I've learned so much
Hmm.
in the last 5 months. I've learned so much about just myself and about people,
Hmm.
and just how to be in the world. I
Yeah.
think for me,
I guess it's important to really track your progress as
totally,
well.
totally,
Hmm.
and like not be afraid to congratulate yourself too.
Hmm.
Like we got a $15,000 Google grant for this woman who runs a severe asthma foundation,
Hmm.
and which is like the first Google grant on Long Island where I live.
Hmm.
And so we were so happy about that. We were so proud of that.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get an article in the Wall Street Journal about it. And I have connections. My neighbor has connections there, so we might be able to get that article.
Great.
So that would be amazing for us. But I just think that accomplishment on its own, like, just makes you feel amazing because
Yeah.
not only are you doing it for a good cause, but it's helping you and it's helping somebody else. So I don't know. It's just been such a liberating and like amazing and transcendent experience for me.
Hmm. That's great. So, any words of advice you want to leave people with, and what to do if they're thinking of starting something new or starting a new venture, to the people listening?
Yeah. Hmm. What I would say is that just keep trying. And
Yeah.
it
Don't give up.
sounds so simple. Like, what the fuck you, Matthias? What? Keep trying? Like, it's easier for you to say. It's like,
Yeah.
but like, it's so true. You
Yeah.
need to just keep trying over and over again. Like the greatest people, just like the greatest people in their fields. That's the one thing they all preach.
They've
You just
failed
have to keep
multiple times.
trying. You
Yeah.
have to keep trying over and over again.
Yeah.
Like there's Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour theory
Hmm.
that you just need to do something over and over and over and over and over again until you make sure you really get it down.
Right.
And we spent hours and hours working on our model and hours building the site and trying to figure out exactly what we wanted to do and where we wanted to take our company.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how to optimize it for iPhones for a while. We were like, should we optimize it for iPhones? I don't know. And then we both decided we all decided that was the best action to take.
Yeah.
And I failed a lot. And then just a different example for school. Like, I failed so many times in high school.
Hmm.
I failed so many classes, and I was so just like beating myself up, and I knew I could do it. but I just didn't believe in myself. So I guess the first two things I would say is that you have to keep trying, and then self-belief. And I guess the third thing I would say is discipline.
Yeah.
And that I would recommend working out. Just
Yeah.
even if it's just walking every day, just do it. Just get some sort of physical activity because you will feel better.
Yeah.
I guess that is my personal experience, but I think anybody who's done it, they attest to it. It's been life changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess for me is just have faith in that, in your ability.
Self-trust. Almost.
Yeah. Have faith in the outcome because
I think that builds an incredible amount of confidence too.
Absolutely. And like when you have that faith, you walk with a different kind of spirit. You move when you walk through the world. People see a person who isn't afraid to take chances, and I think just to not only be themselves, but I guess just take risks and not be afraid to fail. And I think so many people are so afraid of failing, that they don't take the chances that they should. Like there's a really awesome story that Jim Carrey told in this speech he made. He was talking about his father, and he said his father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't think that was a safe job, so he chose to be an accountant instead. And then it's like, and then he said, like 10 years later, my dad got fired from that safe job. And then what he took away from that was what he said was that there is always a chance you can fail at what you don't love. Mm-hmm. So you should just really try and do what you love. Yeah. There's always a chance you're going to fail no matter what. So you might as well do what you love, even if you don't turn out to be that great. Like I really want to be an actor, but like even if that involves me being in like, I don't know, a Mentos commercial, like at least I'm doing what I love, you know?
Yeah.
Compared to like being like in an office job in a cubicle, like sitting around all day. Like I'd lose my mind if I were to do that.
Yeah. I recommend the people watching this video to check out this book right here called Mastery.
Robert Greene. That's my man right there. That's my man right there. Have you read the 50th Law?
Yeah, with 50 Cent.
Yeah, I'm reading that now.
It's fantastic. Gotta hustle.
Robert Greene, everyone. Really recommend him. Should we just go through can we just do the Tai Lopez section of the video and just go through all of our books? I don't have my Lamborghini on campus, everybody, but trust me, it's...
Yeah. Do you know this dude? Well, let's see what books I got right now. Do you know Mike Chernovich?
No, I don't.
He has this thing called The Gorilla Mindset.
Okay.
It's a really uber masculine cover, but... He has some really, really good, good ways, like quick ways to become more mindful.
Yeah.
And he does it through this great, lens. And he tells you exactly what to do.
Yeah, Robert Greene's book Mastery is phenomenal. I can't recommend that enough. He's very serious. He's very straightforward. And a lot of the times, a lot of self-help books, I've read a lot of them. Some of them come off as very disingenuous and not very helpful. But Robert Greene cuts right through the bullshit.
He's done his research.
He's done his research. He's smart, and he always gives historical examples, which are great.
He's a good speaker too. So
absolutely. And if you're not a person who's really active and moving around a lot, then I cannot recommend audiobooks enough.
Yes.
Audiobooks are just incredible. Just get the Audible app. It's pretty cheap, and then usually books are pretty cheap, and then you can just listen to them. And like I listened to The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Yeah.
When I went on a couple road trips in a row, and I just listened to the whole book, and it's been so interesting for me.
Yeah.
What do you think about? Have you read the 48 Laws of Power?
I haven't, but I have heard of it. It was like one of his first. It was his first book, I believe.
It was his first book, and one thing he talks about, and we can get a little political about this, but he talks about how he thinks that power itself, the idea of power, is amoral, and that we can't place morality on power, because so if you have power, you aren't a bad person, and then he talks about how power has very negative connotation in our culture and how it really shouldn't. And then he talks about in the book like how you can obtain and maintain power.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentions like the first law is never outshine the master. So if you have a master
Yeah.
who's like really, if you have like a master and you're really moving up in the world,
Yeah.
and he essentially says that humans are kind of shitty by nature.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was either John Locke or Thomas Hobbes. I don't remember which one said that humans are kind of shitty by nature, but one of them said that, and he talks about, and then he essentially says that all humans play power games all the time, and they're involved in every aspect of our life, and he says how like and then he brings up how relationships are also full of power games that they play, and that like sex is all about power,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and it's interesting. It's very I wouldn't. He said I thought he was cynical at first, but he describes himself as a realist. And the more I read his books, the more I feel like I'm adapting that opinion. Like the 50 Cent book,
Yeah.
like it's a 50th Law. Like it's very just straightforward. Like do this,
Yeah.
or else you're gonna die. Or like certain things in the book, like especially like 50 Cent's a great example of just like the
Yeah.
guy who's a orphan his whole life and just grew up
His
and learned.
motivation was to get out,
Yeah, and
escape, live.
yeah, exactly. And he knew everything that was going on. I love how like I think there was a direct quote from 50 Cent. He talked about Robert Greene. He's like, this dude's the realest gangster on the street. Like he just this nerdy little white guy who's like scheming in the corner. It's like I'd love to meet him and just like watch him analyze me like head to toe.
Yeah.
Just like he's such an interesting person. Robert Greene's, I don't know. He creeps me out. Like I have a feeling he's sitting in his house, like in like LA or something, like checking everybody out, making sure that no one's fucking with him.
Speaking of power, I was reading this book, Power versus Force, by Dr. David R. Hawkins.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Absolutely, just like changed my perception of like human behavior.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things he brings up in it?
I mean, he brings up a lot of things which resonate with me. Particularly, he brings up a lot of like spiritual topics and
totally, yeah,
on aspects of this like New Age communities and why it's like so. Why these things are so popping. He talks about the subconscious mind, and that like we're not consciously aware of it.
Yeah.
And it keeps all our bodily functions working smoothly. Like it heals us and makes us ill when we're unhappy.
Yeah.
All this just like and it goes into this idea of power and what power means. So I haven't read it all yet, but I'm just telling you from what I've read.
Okay.
It's an interesting.
Well, yeah, it's just that the pursuit of power is really interesting to me because that book really changed my perspective on certain things because I thought like the pursuit of power was just like very selfish and everything like that. Yeah. But it's amazing how like certain power games are ingrained in like everyday life, and like after I read that book, maybe this is just I don't want to say a placebo effect, but maybe I was just like confirming some belief I had, but like I started to see certain things that people were saying a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if maybe I was just like confirming myself or whether or not it's true, but it definitely makes you look at the world a little bit differently. And every time a politician says something, a certain phrase or something, you'd be like, okay, how much of that was actually manufactured? And how much of that is completely legitimate? And one of the more interesting aspects of the book was when he talks about how like politicians and how about politicians lying and how it's completely. He said it's just something like we complain about politicians lying, but in reality, it's what we really want.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants a long-term. So nobody wants like a solution in the distant future. It's gonna be all right. So you've never heard a politician be like, all right, so now this is we're in a very serious situation right now. I have this reform, but it's going to take a very long time, but eventually we'll get it. It's like nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear, oh, I'm going to make change right now.
Right now.
And I'm going to build a wall around Mexico or something like that. And And we all know it's
Yeah.
bullshit, but we
Yeah.
eat it up because that's what we want.
That's human. That's the human kind of
Absolutely.
condition. Yeah.
We just want change. If
Immediately.
we like a lot of us don't want change, but when we do, we want it really fast, and then
Yeah.
change is really gradual.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
this inner just conflict,
Definitely.
and it's just the power games itself are really interesting. Then I read The Art of Seduction,
Uh huh.
which
Yeah.
is it wasn't really a critique of the
I have that
pickup
right here.
artists
Oh yeah. I mean, I have it
thing.
right here.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a critique of it, but it was definitely talking about how like the best. It's more. It was more for like relationships,
Yeah.
like how to properly seduce somebody if you want to have a good relationship with them. And at first, I was like super kind of like with every. I feel like with every Robert Greene book, especially the 48 Laws of Power, you're initially reading it and you're like, this guy's a massive douchebag. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, this is he's like a Mr. Burns character who's like sitting in his
Yeah.
castle far away from everyone in this fortress of solitude.
I mean, he
Like
writes books about like war and strategy, so you kind of
absolutely,
feel
yeah,
that from them.
yeah. But
Yeah.
then like I'm sure he's like a perfectly nice person. Like in interviews, he's a pretty good guy. But I just think he really has this idea that this is the way the world is, whether you
Yeah.
like it or not. Like, and the historical examples are really interesting to me. And
Hmm.
and then he uses them in the Art of Seduction. I don't know if he used them in Mastery or not,
Yeah.
but he uses them in the 48 Laws of Power quite a
Yeah.
bit.
The thing
And
I like about The Art of Seduction is he really analyzes these tropes in our culture
totally,
and
totally.
like goes into the idiosyncrasies of that.
And like the character, and then the different characters, the rake, the
Hmm.
siren, and
Definitely.
then it's like when you see certain people acting certain ways to get with other people,
You see it, yeah.
see them adapt to those characters.
Yeah.
Like the guy, you can't say the guy doesn't do his research, whether you disagree with him or not.
Hmm.
But that's really interesting.
He seems like he reads a lot of history.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
totally. He said that's most of his research.
Yeah.
He's reading a lot of history. And what's interesting is that he wrote the 48 Laws of Power after just like trying to be like a Hollywood writer and dealing with all the executives and how cutthroat it was.
Yeah.
And he said that's where he wrote the 48 Laws of Power. And that's kind of how him and 50 Cent collaborated
Mm.
because they both had really similar ideas about how the world works, but they were from completely different ends of the spectrum.
Mm.
50 growing up in this like horror in like the worst part of Queens, and then Robert Greene like probably I think he had like a middle class upbringing, but he's like a white guy, and then who writes books for a living, and then you have 50 Cent rapping about all this hardcore shit, but then they come together because they have this really similar worldview,
Yeah.
and then now they're like really good friends. So
It's
it's
interesting.
just an interesting guy overall.
Yeah. Definitely.
Want to do some book recommendations?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you got?
Okay. So one thing I'd immediately recommend is The Way of Men by Jack Donovan.
Hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd also recommend The 48 Laws of Power. You probably won't agree with everything he says in the book. I don't think he agrees with everything he says in the book, but I think he's just really showing you the way he sees the world.
Hmm.
You don't have to agree with it, but he's just showing you the way he sees the world.
Yeah.
He says that it's kind of a realistic way of the way the world works. It'll make you a bit more cynical, but I think it's just an interesting read, even if you don't like it. And it'll make you, and you can take certain aspects of it. You don't have to take everything from it. Um,
Hmm.
I'd
Yeah.
say you should also read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Either that or read Mastery by Robert Greene. Both of them are really good.
Yeah.
Um, I think The Way of the Superior Man by David Data.
Yeah.
That really changed a lot of things for me and just a whole different perspective on the world. It really opened me up to spirituality, which is something I
Yeah.
never really considered.
Definitely.
I was like very cynical. I was like, no, I don't need spirituality in my life. But then because I'm not really, I guess you could say I'm agnostic. I don't really believe in a God, but that really opened me up to more spiritual means. And it just I
That's
think
great.
I don't know about you, but like that book really taught me how to be a better man, even though I'm only
Yeah.
19. But it really taught me how to approach. And then once I started applying those teachings, I got really positive responses from people.
Yeah. Even like little self-help books that are seen as like oh, if you hear the name you'll be like, oh my god, this is so whack. But like Men Are From Venus and
Women Are
like
from
what
Mars. I haven't read
that
that one.
that is actually really like all the facts there are like so spot on. Like if you
Really?
read it, you will be like, this is.
Who wrote that?
I don't remember actually, but I do remember reading it at one point and agreeing with a lot of what was being said. But it's really tells you about like the different, like this feeling that like men need to be like
Mm-hmm.
need to do what they need to do, and like the women need to be cared for. It really just like explains a
Yeah.
lot
Mm-hmm.
of these things that we're kind of like it's mysterious,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he kind of just like puts it on the page. And well, I want to recommend this book. It's called The Education of Millionaires.
Yeah.
Everything you won't learn in college about how to be successful.
Yeah.
And that really, it tells you how some of the most smartest, successful people in the country didn't finish college. None of them learned their most critical skills from college.
Yeah.
Is that they
Well,
got their real world experience, and this book is just really good at teaching you like success skills, like little
totally.
success
Totally.
skills.
Totally.
And then also the kind of I'm into this whole well, Tony Robbins talks about it a lot, but NLP and neuro-linguistic programming. And this book is kind of similar to the ideas of NLP. It's not really that. It's called psycho-cybernetics. And so this is about how to improve your self-image, really.
Really?
How
Okay.
to like dehypnotize yourself from all these limiting beliefs you have, and how to really just, you know, it says use the do-it-yourself tranquilizers that bring peace of mind.
Totally.
Happiness is a habit.
Totally. So, what do
Yeah.
you think? And then I guess this should be my final question because
Yeah.
we're coming up on an hour here. But
Yeah.
what do you think about that whole crew on the Real Social Dynamics? And what do you think is the perception of them? And what do you think the real? Because you have a lot of experience with them. I only recently started watching RSD Tyler's stuff, Owen, and he's just awesome.
Yeah.
And again, I'm kind of actively. I wouldn't say I'm actively against the pickup artist community, but I have a lot of issues with them, and I think there's a lot of.
Oh yeah, I do
There's
too.
a lot of aspects of it that are morally bankrupt, but I think some of the stuff is great, and I think especially Tyler. I haven't watched a lot of the other stuff, but to me, Tyler has been the most interesting. What do you think is the perception of that group, and what do you like about it so much, and what was so compelling about it to you?
I think what drew me to it is it was very empowering for me to see people just having this kind of. I mean, Tyler does have this like cult leader kind of like approach,
Yeah.
But I'm really interested. What interested me to RSD is their personal development and how they empowered men, particularly in terms of like what to do in order to like get someone really interested in you, and how do you use like self-amusement is something they talk about.
Yeah.
Like how can you entertain yourself in an environment? Like you can't suddenly walk into an environment and have everyone suddenly just approaching you.
Yeah,
You have to kind of have this presence and this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really drew me to them, is this kind of. They have figured out social dynamics, the real social dynamics.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, I come completely against the modern other pickup communities. This kind of like negging routines, coming up with canned openers and
Oh my God.
all of that. It's just like you can't fully embrace your true personality if you're doing that.
Totally, and like it's kind of like making a mockery of just like any real conversation. It's like you're just kind of streamlining conversation into these certain things. Like, go up to that girl.
It's making it into like it's a tactic, like it's something that.
Yeah, and like go up to that girl and say that, and then like whereas you watch Tyler when he's in the field, you see him like he's like, all right, just go talk to her.
Yeah, just be
like,
natural.
Go talk to like 5 women tonight, and then you'll feel better. And then he like pushes them in there. He's like, go, and then he goes, and then the guy goes to talk to her, and then whatever happens. And then he comes back. He's like, "How do you feel?" And the guy's like, "I feel great. I just actually went up to her." And that approach anxiety is something I hear a lot from my friends. Is that they're just like, "Dude, I just can't do it. I can't just go up to a man." And think about that. You're just going up to a person you've never met before in your life and talking to them.
Scary, yeah.
It is kind of scary. And like some people have gotten over that fear, but some people really still have that fear.
Yeah.
So it's a perfectly legitimate one.
Yeah.
But that's what I really enjoyed about watching some of Tyler's stuff is that he's very supportive and he's not too much of a jerk, and but I feel like he has a grasp over all of the dynamics, and he's not just selling you this BS equation that you just you say this word to discombobulate. It's like, oh, you say these couple sentences and then this will discombobulate this girl in some way and then she'll want to sleep with you, instead of getting her to sleep with you because she likes you and you're a cool person and whatever the reasons are.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. It's it's really just taking advantage of a lot of insecurities in people.
Definitely.
And I don't know.
It's the whole magic pill mentality again. It's
totally.
We want immediate results.
Yeah. If you want immediate results with women and getting the women of your dreams, just follow this absolutely ridiculous equation. And it's like, well, here's her brain here, and you need to do this and this and this and this. And then I'm just I watched one of those videos, and I was like, my head was spinning, and I was like, am I just dumb? But I'm like, no, this is just complicated.
Yeah.
But what I like about RSD is that he's like, all right, so listen, you're gonna get rejected a lot. And it's like, but you have to do this consistently, or else you're not gonna be able. It's
with anything, just like practice makes perfect.
But just practice in social situations. Just
yeah.
Practice being yourself, and practice going up to random people and talking to them.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to do, is just going up to random people at parties, not even necessarily women, just random people, and just being like, hey, and starting a conversation with them. And I found that I've been a more socially conscious and socially aware person, but also I'm able to talk to people and have free-flowing conversations without there being any awkward stoppages because of that experience in the field.
I think that's what a really good coach does, is that he or she pushes you just gets you out of this comfort zone.
Totally, and just to grow. I forgot who said it, but they said diamonds grow. I think it was oaks grow strong in wind. And it was pressure. No, here's what it was: pressure can bust a pipe, but it also can create a diamond. It's one of my favorites, and it's just, you need to just put that pressure on yourself to do certain things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for doing this.
No problem.
I'm sure the people listening will appreciate this conversation a lot.
Sure, they will too. All right.
Thank you, man.
All right, no problem. See you later.
Peace out.
Bye.